Good evening, everyone here at Book Passage, and good evening to those of you streaming on YouTube. We are very pleased to have all of you here tonight to welcome two of our very favorite gentlemen. One we've known quite a while, one we met today, both securely in our Hall of Fame here. So the first gentleman you will be meeting is a former associate warden of a maximum security prison. He is a former hostage negotiator, and he was the director of California State Parole System. So he has used his nearly 30 years behind bars to influence nearly 10 novels. He has worked with a large amount of the society none of us will ever encounter, but a lot of it informs what he writes, who he writes about, and he writes with incredible authenticity. And he is here tonight with another incredible author and his friend, who I intuited was probably one of the hardest working actors and filmmakers in show business until I truly did a deep dive into his list of credits. And it would be harder to find a show he has not been on than those he has been on. You may recognize him from Bosch, from True Detective, Homeland, or his new role on the new CBS soap opera Beyond the Gates. He is probably most known, it's either a toss-up for the TV movie The Facts of Life Goes to Paris, or his nearly 30 years on General Hospital, where he has played the stalwart psychiatrist Dr. Kevin Collins, and his diabolical, evil, one-handed twin brother, Ryan Chamberlain. So how lucky are we that he added author to his already very full plate? His second book, Hollywood Payback, is already coming out next March, but tonight he is here to talk about his first, Hollywood Hustle. We are very pleased to welcome these two terrific men and great friends, Jim Latoile and Jon Lindstrom, to Book Passage.
Oh, we know what side we're on. Yeah.
Well, good afternoon, good evening.
Hello, hello.
Good to see everyone.
Hi, Cat Caputo.
Hi there. So, yeah, it's really a blast to come and talk to Jon because, as Kathy was describing, a lot of people try to make that multi-career kind of jump to from acting to writing crime fiction, and they don't always stick the landing. I think we've seen a couple of those. I mean, you came out of the box hot with Hollywood Hustle. It got award nominations for best debut, best mystery. I mean, last month we were in New York at Thriller Fest, and you were nominated for best audiobook, which you narrated. So I mean, you could be becoming the Swiss Army knife of crime fiction.
The Swiss Army knife of guys who get nominated but never win.
It's a nomination.
I'm also a 4-time Emmy loser. But
No, but I mean, what is it about you that is so different than other actors who've tried to make that jump? I mean, there's one other that I can think of, and that's Deborah Goodrich Royce, who writes, stellar thrillers. Another daytime television actor. What enabled you to make that, where some of these other people kind of fell into the tar pit, that didn't quite make it?
Good metaphor, tar pit. I think I'm just kind of the Avis of creatives. I just try harder, and I keep at it. I do have a gift of determination, something that my father instilled in me. But it's kind of like when somebody wants to jump into a different part of our field. Say an actor wants to become a director. Often you can just hand him a script and say, okay, here's 2 scripts of the show that we've already shot that I want you to go and block them out. And I've seen this happen. Go and block them out, shot by shot, and come back and show them to me. And you're never going to hear from them again. Because what you said was, go off and do some work. And I don't know. I was willing to do that. I actually took those scripts and blocked them out, and they came back and, started directing. I also think that I always wanted to write at least one of these. One of my favorite places in anywhere in the world is in a store like this. I love a bookstore and to be surrounded by ideas like that, but it always fascinated me. How do people get them between two covers? And then you try and it's not that easy. But I do think that everything that I've done has not only led me, but prepared me for the next step. So I started writing short stories when I was in college studying theater. You learn theater, you learn something about structure with 3 acts or 6 acts or whatever it's broken down into. You learn to act, you learn something about character. You also learn a lot about dialogue. I started writing screenplays because in Hollywood, everybody and their dog has a screenplay. That's what you do. You don't sit in Hollywood and say, I'm an actor, I'm going to go write a book. No, you write a screenplay because I'm going to make a movie. And so I did that. And then I made the movies. Each one of those steps brought me closer and closer and closer to the intricacies of how to write a book. What really got me over the hump, though, and I think for me, certainly this made the difference, was I was invited to start narrating audiobooks. And as I did that, I really was able to lean closer in for 2 reasons. One, I got to narrate Don Winslow, Blake Crouch, Alex Finlay, a series of Isaac Asimov books. So I got to read some really good stuff. I also got to read some not good stuff. And I remember sitting in the booth one day going, I can do better than this shit. I mean, anybody could write this. And that was the day I went, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And so I started doing it. But it was Alex Finlay who I wrote to. I wrote to a lot of those guys that inspired me. Blake, Alex, they wrote me back, which stunned me. You could write to a movie director, a TV director, an actor. They're not going to write you back. Somebody that works for them is going to write you back. But authors will actually engage with you. And that made me even more attracted to this world of telling this kind of a story, a long form story. But it was Alex, and I've told this story a lot. It was Alex who said to me, if you're serious, Jon, you're the one, you have to go to conferences. You've got to go to Thriller Fest and BoucherCon. You've got to get out and meet people. Plus, you have to write your damn book. But, he looked at it and actually, gave me advice on things, So he's the one who put me on the road to doing this and showed me how to do it. So I don't know. I had a lot of preparation that I wasn't even aware of until I sat down. We have a saying, you don't know what you know. Sometimes you just don't realize how much you actually have learned until you sit down and start to apply it.
Yeah, that's very true. And yeah, I next time I see Alex, I'm going to thank him because you need to be here. This book, for a debut thriller, it doesn't read like a debut novel. This reads like someone who's been, toiling away at this craft for years. And this is the latest episode. For folks who haven't read,
thank you. Wow.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Now, for folks who haven't read Hollywood Hustle, can you kind of give them a little bit of a taste of what Winston Green is up to and the story?
Winston Green is a once fairly popular actor, never really reached the A-list, but had a good career. I based him, I can say it now, on a lot of people I've known, but really patterned specifically on Tom Sizemore or Michael Madsen.
Yeah.
Brilliantly gifted actors and storytellers who had an incredible launch to their career and were working with the very best in the business, and because of their own demons, crashed and burned for a while. Winston has had that kind of career arc. His representation actually sold him as the new McQueen. He had that intensity and gift. But he's just gotten himself back to kind of like the cat in the poster, hang in there, baby, where the cat's just by its claws. He's gotten his life steady again. Only steady. It's still disturbing. He has a very difficult relationship with his adult troubled daughter. He's got a granddaughter that he's very close to, but because of his relationship with his daughter, doesn't get to see her as much as he would like to. He's been sober for quite a while, and that's right when things go bad. And things go bad because there's always people on the outside of show business who think the people on the inside are just made of money. And I can tell you personally, I've had that situation more than once. It's almost like standing in the middle of a circle and there's all these people around you with their hand out. It's really remarkable. So Winston's adult daughter gets kidnapped for ransom. And they want all of his movie money, not knowing that we've been in a land of diminishing returns for a while. I even mentioned the strikes in the book. But that's the guy they go to make their big score, not knowing that there is no score.
Yeah. Yeah, Winston is such a great character, and the way you flesh him out, and you mentioned Tom Sizemore and other actors that we've seen kind of flame out, like Jan Michael Vincent and folks like that. How much did you draw on your Hollywood experience with people in that ilk that just had a hard go of it to kind of feel...
Probably more than I wanted to.
Yeah.
I think it just started to come out. If you haven't written a book and you start writing your first, if you have written your first, it kind of flows out of you in a barf. And I had a lot I wanted to get off my chest. And when people read the first draft, they were like, "This is a little angry, Jon." And I said, "You're right. I need to go through this again." But it's funny you mentioned Jan Michael. I do cite his arc in the book. Jan Michael Vincent, if you don't know, was another one of these incredibly gifted young actors. He was the highest paid actor in television in the late 1970s on a show called Airwolf. And he died without his leg. Wow, sorry. It was 2 weeks before the papers even mentioned it. And he was living with some fan in North Carolina. Somebody who opened their house and let him live in the basement or something like that. We see that a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't have enough fingers and toes to count the people. And I think that's why it gets to me, that who have given so much and lost much more.
Yeah, I could see in that environment how it would take a toll on someone, because you're always on, and that's a drain, to have to do.
Yeah, there's no escaping it. I mean, I used to see Jan at the Trancas bar out in Malibu on Sunday morning drinking Spanish Bloody Marys. I mean, slamming tequila at 9:00 on Sunday morning, and then he'd get in a fist fight and get his face busted up, and he was supposed to be on set the next day. I mean, he was a truly troubled guy.
Yeah. But
he was gifted. He was absolutely brilliant. So, there's part of that destructive nature that is almost inherent in the creative life. And actors specifically don't get to go paint. They don't get to write necessarily. They have to walk around with this. This is it. That's all they got. And that can be pretty easily excavated of what's good in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense. Now, some of the things you talked about just now paint a different picture of Hollywood than a lot of us think of, and what we envision is this very glitzy, glamorous world, high fashion parties.
There's that too.
Yeah,
there is a lot of good stuff in Hollywood.
There's a lot of good stuff, but it's not not so much.
It's not in this book. No,
not in this book. No, you paint a very different picture, a more realistic picture, I think, of Hollywood. how much pushback did you get from the industry folks that you're associated with about that kind of a portrayal?
Actually, none. If anything, I got a lot of gratitude. A lot of people were just saying, "Thank you, John, for pulling back the curtain and showing people how we actually live here." That most of us aren't. I mean, let's face it. If you're talking about the Tom Hanks of the world, and I love Tom Hanks, I think he's one of the greatest actors that ever walked in front of a camera. But there's about 5 people in that room, and then there's everybody else. Talk about the 1%, or 0.01%.
Yeah.
That's really a more correct ratio to everybody else who's just trying to make a living. And it really has been a land of diminishing returns. We've watched our money go down and down and down and down while people up here make more and more and more. And they don't even make anything. When was the last time Jeff Bezos made a movie? He wouldn't know where to put the camera, but he knows how to make money. We need those guys too. But there's a big disconnect between the people who actually make stuff and the people who get paid for it.
One of the many things I like about Hollywood Hustle and your writing is the way you can immediately introduce a character and you feel like you've known them. I mean, as an example, early pages in the book, he's just talking about his daughter, Cassie, and how she's very impulsive and she's full of rage, most of it directed at him. And you start in a very few lines, get to know her and what the issues are between them and their relationship. I mean, in less than a paragraph, we know who Cassie is, what her demons are, and it kind of provides a foundation for where this book is going to go. That's dark magic to be able to do that.
Thanks, but I mean that's really high praise coming from the guy who wrote River of Lies. I don't think it's that hard I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to write this book and why people in the business have been so open with me, because don't we all know somebody who's just fallen off? Don't we all know somebody who has a very difficult relationship with their progeny? I think we all do. I think we can all relate to it. We all have either experienced it or know someone who has. So you don't need a lot of description. We just need to set the stage, as it were. It's kind of like a guy walks onto a stage. If he's all by himself, you don't know where he is. But if you put a palm tree next to him, he's somewhere sunny. So I don't think it's. Maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit because, like I say, it did come from you. But I don't know. I just don't know the answer to that one.
Well, yeah, no, it's very effective, and I mean, without a lot of fanfare, you've introduced these characters. I mean, even like the people that Winston involves himself in, Teddy and those folks who try to, act as his supporting characters in this. There's nobody in the book that is just a set piece. They're there for a reason, and these supporting characters just kind of revolve around Winston and really kind of propel that story.
Yeah, when it comes to Teddy, the private detective, and Grover Washington, no, not the musician, the stuntman, they're based on people that I've known. Grover is based on a guy named Manny Perry, who you can see, I think, die 5 times in the big shootout in the movie Heat. He's a great stuntman, but he actually was the stunt double for Lou Ferrigno in the old Hulk TV show. And I happened to work with him on a show. That's how I got to meet him. Teddy is a Cajun-born, New Orleans-bred, fallen detective. And I used to have an apartment in New Orleans. So I met some of those guys. They're big, they're Choctaw, and you just don't mess around with them. The important thing about those guys is that I wanted to show the friendship, the strength of the friendships that these guys have for each other, and how unshakable that is. I know that there's 3 people that I could call from that world, the world that I live in, LA, no matter the circumstance, and they would be there for me. Those are the guys I wanted to write about.
Yeah. Interesting. So in your background, you've been you've written screenplays as you talked about, you've directed, you've produced. How did that background help you when it came to making the jump over to long form fiction?
I don't mean this facetiously, but I think it really helped propel me in that I wouldn't have anybody telling me what to do. I can't tell you how many development meetings I've sat in where some idiot says, well, what if we bring in some dancing dwarves? What are you talking about? Oh, and put them on cocaine too? Are you serious? I mean, that's an exaggeration, but you truly hear ideas that come out of left field, and the problem with those ideas are usually, when it comes to Hollywood, because there's so much money being spent, it's take my idea or we're not making your movie. We're not going to take your script to the next level, which is barely up, a short rung on a very tall ladder already. That's why when this was optioned for Hollywood, and it has been bought, I just had to laugh because that was not what I ever intended to do with it. I never wanted to make this a movie. But the fun part of it is that my job's done. They can go and make whatever they're going to make. They're going to do it anyway. And who knows what that will look like. But if you ever read Philip K. Dick, yeah, there was a great writer. His story that became the movie Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger. If you read that story, that main character was probably closer to Woody Allen. Seriously. So you never know what's going to happen with Hollywood, but whatever happens, it's going to be a move that justifies the money.
But it's and as you said, it's a very different process because writing Hollywood Hustle is a very, isolated kind of process.
I mean, seriously, I had nobody who was going to tell me what to do until I got to the editor. And on Alex Finlay's suggestion, he said, you should hire an independent editor before you submit it to anybody. And so I did that. And I found a guy named Nathaniel Marunas. He's in New York. And he used to run his own publishing house. And he was absolutely brilliant. And again, the world of publishing and how it differs, though the similarities of marketing and selling these things in terms of how do you find an audience and identify them and reach them and cost versus, profit and all that. But nobody in publishing ever tells you do it or else. Not even the publishers. They say, we have a little suggestion, but if you don't want to do it, just tell us to jump off a cliff. I've never had anybody do that before. But in publishing, that's what they do. The last thing they want to do is mess with the writer. So, the first thing was nobody's telling me what to do in this room, in this solitary environment. And by the way, you're not alone in there. There's all these voices in your head. It's a great place to be when you think about it. Nobody argues with you. And the other part of it is that the world of publishing, everybody, the writers, the editors, the publishers, the agents. I love my agent. I can't say that always about the agents I've had in Hollywood, but my book agent, I'd kill for her. I would. For Liza Felizik, I would absolutely kill for her. The people are so not only welcoming, but so supportive of who you are and what you're trying to say.
And I've said this before, the book community, especially crime fiction, is nothing that I expected. Literally, I came out of prison into this. And I did not expect people to be so open, supportive, and just willing to go that extra mile and help you take that next step.
To help you. Yeah. I have a very good friend who is a showrunner. She's retired now, but she created, I think, 12 different network series. And she always would tell me, John, writers are the most supportive and helpful of any group. And being an actor, I'd say, oh, yeah, whatever. Sure, while they stab you on the back,
Yeah.
But she has been proven right more times than I can count. But I'm glad you bring up your background here, Jim.
Uh-oh.
Has anybody
I
here
made a
read
mistake.
River of Lies? You have. You have.
Oh,
Okay. This is a great book. Now,
oh, thanks.
Jim has this background in prison, a criminologist.
I was a very bad
He
man.
was a very bad man. I remember you telling me a story about how a guy um, rode you around on a lawnmower
Oh, yeah.
who had,
When I was a kid.
yeah, when you were a kid,
Yeah.
6 or 7 years old,
Mhm.
and he was in for what? Double homicide?
Yep.
Wow. And he rode you around on a.
Yeah. That's
Little
examples of parenting, is what it flashes back to.
Well, I ask because I want to bring this up because I read your book, River of Lies, and there's some things about it, given your background, that I could never imagine you would have. First of all, the sense of humor. Now, this is the second or third in the series of Detective Emily
That's
Hunter.
the second in the series.
Second in the series. Okay. First of all, Detective Hunter is a chick.
Mhm.
Good looking chick, too. At least the way I picture her.
Apparently, yes.
Apparently so, right? Okay. One, I honestly haven't read an author depict a female detective with such accuracy and insight since Sue Grafton
Mm.
in Kinsey Malone.
Wow.
So coming from a dude,
Yeah.
props to you, man.
Thank you.
But the other part is is your sense of humor. I want to read just a couple of passages here, if that's all right. Okay, so she's in a situation here,
Okay.
and some things have kind of blown up in their face, and so she's talking to a doctor, and she says, "Well, thanks for the reminder. Next time, could you bring me someone with a little less media baggage?" And the doctor says, "Hey, we brought you a John Doe. You had to go and identify him." And she replies, "The burden of competence." That's not even my favorite one. I have another one here. Yeah. Once I get to here we go. She's talking with one of the business leaders in the town. Use your impressive skills of persuasion to get him to move this to the top of the pile. I mean, you are one of the city's most eligible bachelors. Emily said the last part louder than she needed to, causing a couple of other detectives to pop their heads up from their tasks like meerkats with ADHD. Now that's a visual. Now, there is one more here that has nothing to do with humor. It's really about the pathos, your understanding of this world. And not everybody can do this. Sorry, I'm reading these a little out of order. So, but this one really struck me. There were empty gurneys parked in the hallway, and Emily followed a path she'd trod many times before, past the open bays of the autopsy suite to the one room reserved for murder cases. A smaller space, which hoped to keep the secrets and pain contained. Wow. Okay, you weren't a cop.
No.
Where does that come from?
Well, even though I worked in the prison, you see a lot. There was a period of time early in my career when I was at Folsom, where we were shooting somebody on the yard every day. There were stabbings and murders every day.
And guards were shooting?
Yeah,
prisoners.
Mostly. We had to shoot to break up riots, break up fights, break up stabbing assaults. So you're seeing this and you're experiencing this, and you can't help but soak up some of that trauma. And it has to go someplace. So when I retired, that's kind of where it went. Is all this stuff was still with me, and I started writing crime fiction, and it was a therapeutic way to get some of that stuff out. I have a couple of novels that are sitting in my desk drawer. Some very gruesome endings to governor's chief of staff that I had a bad relationship with, and I was very happy the way that ended. But it was a way for me to get that out in a very pro-social manner, acceptable in society. But yeah, it just it sticks with you. I don't write dark prison stories, but some of those, like you said, some of those character voices just never went away.
Right. So, I mean, it is therapeutic, but it's only therapeutic if you've allowed yourself to feel it in the first place.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, all I can say is congratulations to you. If you have not read
Yeah.
this book or the other Dr. Emily Hunter, come on, man.
Yep.
No, and I will say, we read a lot, we see a lot,
Yeah.
and what we can often do is we can see the end coming. This caught me completely by surprise. I did not see it coming at all,
Okay.
and I'm always looking for it. So congratulations.
Yeah, this
is
was
an
a fun
excellent book.
Oh, thank you very much. That was a fun one to kind of put together. Back to the star of the show here, Jon Lindstrom. Your background is really interesting. You as Catherine introduced, I mean, you've been on damn near every television show ever created. I mean, General Hospital, Beyond the Gates, Bosch, Homeland. Which of those sets was the most fun to be on?
Well, it kind of goes to which character is the most fun to play.
Ah,
Right now I'm doing this show in Atlanta called Beyond the Gates, and I play a casino owner who's really a pretty dark character. I'm having a blast, man. It fits my brand. Restrained evil in a suit.
restrained.
It's what I do best. It's my sweet spot. General Hospital was great. Bosch was great. And in large part because Michael Connelly was on set.
Mm.
So here was one of my heroes on set, and it turns out he's one of the loveliest people to have on set. Man, I don't know. It's just been a great ride. It's been a great career. It's very hard to say this was my favorite, and don't ever ask me who my favorite actor to work with was, because that's going to leave somebody out.
Yeah.
I have an answer, but I won't say it. Don't ask me later either. But my favorite part of it is the fact that I've been able to do it. It's a real gift for all of the bad shit I put into this. It's a great life. It really is a great way to spend the day working. And I always say beats the hell out of working for a living.
But how do you? I mean, because you flew here from Atlanta, from the show there to come and be with us. How do you
to be with you, Jim? Really?
Yes, as everyone did, just to come see me, John. But how do you balance that workload with the shows that you're doing and writing and everything else that you're involved? And one thing we didn't mention, he's also a musician, in your background too. So it's like, how do you keep all of this stuff from just falling on the floor?
I don't know. I'm tired a lot.
Yeah.
But then I can fly into San Francisco a night early and go to a nice hotel and get some room service and treat myself that way. It's all time management. I don't sleep really well, so I get up around 5:30. Once I get the dog out and the dog and the cat fed, I sit down. And if I don't have to be on set that day, or at least until later, I can get in a couple of hours. And if I'm not working, that I will get up and do it anyway. But it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot to juggle.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said I used to be a musician. I don't have time to play the drums anymore. But I miss that a lot. If I had the chance, I'd probably do it.
Huh.
But I don't know. It's just, I'm a really blessed guy. I get to get up every day and do something that I love.
Well, we're glad you're doing it because we're enjoying the hell out of it. And you've got the sequel coming out, Hollywood Payback, in the spring. Can you tease us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a sequel. When I pitched everybody at Thriller Fest in 2022, I said I envisioned it as a series of crime novels set in Los Angeles and with Hollywood as a backdrop or as a theme. So Hollywood Payback is kind of the opposite. It's kind of like the anti-Winston Green. There were guys that I knew all the way back in acting class. He was in acting class with Jake is his name, Jake Ferguson. He was in acting class with Winston Green, but he never got anywhere. And instead of putting on his sensical hat and going home and back to Oregon and getting a job for his, in his father's drugstore or something, he decided to become a bartender and get hooked on drugs and alcohol, and then became a gigolo. And in one mad dash to try and break free of this sordid life he'd found himself in, he takes part in a robbery, and somebody gets killed. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens before the book begins. So that's actually chapter 1. Thanks for all the research, by the way. Jim answered a lot of questions for me. Anyway, the book really begins when he comes back to Los Angeles, because, as you put it, it's your what is it called when you have to return to the place that you were convicted?
Oh yeah. You're returning back to the county last legal residence.
Last legal residence. Thank you. So he has to come back to Los Angeles, and he ends up in L.A., setting up shop in downtown LA and trying to get his life back. But he also has, of course, a woman he needs to apologize to. And there's somebody in the circle that he doesn't realize that has a certain amount of payback in mind. And it just so happens that it feeds a certain kind of payback that Jake has in mind. And that's what the book is about.
That sounds great. I like it. Now, that was your second, novel. Mm-hmm. How was the writing process different between your first novel and your second one?
It sucked. Everybody said your second book is going to be your hardest one. You even told me that once. And no truer statement has ever been uttered. It is a slog. That doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it, especially when I got to my second draft. Just getting that first draft down is pushing a boulder uphill, man.
What was so different about it?
I think psychologically there's a certain expectation about it. Mm-hmm. I had to deliver it. Yeah. Where I didn't have to, I could have self-published that. I didn't have any expectations for it whatsoever. But I do think there's something that goes on in your head that, oh my God, I've got to step up here and do this. And I think the imposter syndrome comes in. We were talking about that in the car over here, that, when we hear Michael Conley and Don Winslow talking about their imposter syndrome, it's like, okay, I guess that's all right to feel that, but you still feel it.
Yes. You do.
So, and you have to get past that. Yeah. I think that was probably the hardest part.
Yeah. I mean, that's very true. It's a lot of people take years to get their first novel out. You've got that time, but now you're under contract, and there's that expectation to deliver.
Yeah, there's a deadline now. Mm-hmm. And it's like I work on deadlines all the time. I got to learn my lines before I step on set, and I got to learn them. I can't just kind of wing it. Somebody wrote it. They're expecting to shoot this. So you have to learn it. So I understand the concept of a deadline, but there was something about doing a book on deadline that scared the hell out of me. Really did. Yeah. I knew what I wanted to write. I knew what the book was supposed to be. I'm not a plotter. I don't do outlines, but I knew what it was. I knew where it was going to end, but it still just scared me to death into inaction. Yeah. To where I kind of had to let it get me to a point where I had to start really working on it.
Yeah, you felt the pressure.
I felt the pressure.
Yeah. So because you love pressure,
So much.
you're also co-writing another series with Jeff Ayers, the
What the
National
hell
Park
is
Thriller
wrong with
series.
me, man?
It's a disease.
It really is.
yeah.
Yeah. Do people in prison get cured of this? Because I'm thinking about committing a
No,
crime just to get out of it.
That's why we have recidivism. It's just you just keep coming back. So yeah, no, you've taken on co-writing with another author, Jeff Ayers, as together you're A.J. Landau.
Yeah. He was writing them with Jon Land.
With Jon Land.
Their first 2 books have been very successful.
Mm-hmm.
And John had to step away for some reason. And so Jeff came to me at, I think it was BoucherCon, in Nashville, and asked me if I would step in and work with him since John had to leave. And first I said no. But Jeff.
Yes.
He's he didn't take no very well.
No
he's hard to say no to. He's a hell of a guy. He's just everybody loves Jeff Ayers. He's one of the best people in the business. But the way he laid it out, what it is he described it as Die Hard in the national parks.
Right.
And the first 2 books are definitely that. But he really got me when he said, well, this one I want to do kind of like James Bond. Okay, now we're talking. James Bond, I know. Yeah. So we're, I don't know, probably halfway through it now and having a great time.
Good. Yeah. How is that working with another author? Because it's not quite the writer's room, but it's not independent.
No, but it's also not my first time. I had collaborated on a couple of screenplays and TV series, pilots and Bibles and things like that. When he asked me to do it, I said, listen, I don't know how you do it, but for me, what seems to work is we delegate kind of every other, it would be a scene, but for this, every other chapter.
Yeah.
And then we send them back and forth and we refine that way. And in this case, he corrects my mistakes because Jeff has done all the research. He's a demon on that kind of stuff. So not having to do the heavy lifting is also an attraction. I can just do the fun stuff. But so far it's been pretty seamless. And he didn't ever say how he and John did it, but he didn't put up a fight.
Yeah, I mean, that's the tricky part about doing a co-writing thing like that is that voice. It has to sound seamless. It can't sound like 2 people
exactly. It has to sound like somebody named A.J. Landau, who doesn't exist, so who knows what he sounds like. Right. Well, there's 2 books that delineate what he sounds like. Mm-hmm. So I think if I wanted to do anything, I would like to have a little more personality in the book, because I think books have a personality.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So I would like to kind of define better what A.J. Landau sounds like.
I like that. No, so I'm really looking forward to that series to see what comes out the pipe on that.
Me too.
So I want to make sure we have time for questions because I know folks are going to have some questions for you, Jon. So we'll start with Chris.
So your book is optioned.
Yeah.
Done. You're stepping back. What happens if somebody in the committee decides to put in 12 dancing dwarfs? How are you going to handle that? Are you just going to look away?
How many zeros are on the check? No, I wouldn't do that. And so far, I haven't had any situation like that with this particular company and these producers. In fact, the script is being written now by a guy named Stephen Cronish, who ran the series 24 and Wise Guy. And, he's a very, very talented writer. And we've had great talks, great Zooms. The producers have asked me about casting and they want to do as authentic a job. I think if it were a different kind of book, it might be a different conversation. But because it's this and everyone involved wants to pull back the curtain, as it were, I don't think I'm going to have that issue. The biggest one will probably be about casting, and that'll be more about money than anything else.
Mhm.
Good question though, because yeah, that happens a lot.
Okay, so I'd like you to use the
Oh, sure. Hi. So you don't want to produce or direct your movie?
No, I've done that. I have done that.
And you're okay with that? What if they screw it up?
I could screw it up. Making a movie is very, very difficult. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things that can go
Okay.
wrong. Even Martin Scorsese's made some duds, man.
Okay.
So it's kind of the same thing. You really just want to, you hope for the best.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, I wouldn't want to direct another movie unless I had a lot of support. I've done it independently, and it's just too hard work. I
Sure.
don't have enough years
I,
left.
I was just curious, though, who is putting it on? I mean, who's your...
Oh, it's a company called Eighth Entertainment,
Okay.
AETH. The people involved have actually had another company where they made something like 200 genre films.
Okay.
All of them under $2 million, I think. They decided that they've been very successful, but they decided they wanted to up their game. And so they built a slate of, I think, 6 projects. One of them is, I think, a remake of The Serpent and the Rainbow, the Wes Craven movie. I don't know, maybe that's somebody's favorite movie or something, and mine. And they all have a floor budget that guarantees production value. So they just wanted to really kind of up their game.
That's good. Another question.
Hi. First of all, I'd like you to teach my son about time management. I mean, that sounded awesome. I have a question about your craft with your first novel. You talked about barfing. I always say my first draft is vomiting on the page, so very similar. I would like to know how many words your first draft was and how many drafts it took you to get to the point where you were ready to show people.
That's a really good question. I don't know how many words the first draft was, but I went through a few, and by the time I got it to Nathaniel Marunas, it was almost 100,000 words, and we cut out almost 30,000. I had subplots and co-conspirators. The maid was in on it. I mean, and he was like, "There's too many people here, John. We should cut these." And I think, all in all, because I did another kind of small draft once I got to my agent, and then I did another one with the publishers. But really, before it went out to any publishing houses, I think it would have been about 8 drafts. I mean, full drafts. Yeah, going through from page 1. And just tell your son to get up earlier. Does that answer your question, though? Okay.
Other questions? Anything online, Jonathan?
Not at this point. Could be something soon.
Fine.
Okay.
So you are not a plotter. When you co-write, are you handed or given what your chapters should be?
In this case, yeah. Jeff has come up with a very basic outline. It's chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's pretty loose. I mean, we've already added to it. And I'm kind of glad he didn't hand me like a real heavy, outline. 'Cause I would feel constricted by that. I would. Not everybody else would, but I certainly would. And I think he recognized that. And, and Jeff's the kind of writer who likes to discover anyway. I mean, I think anybody who writes, their favorite moment of writing is when they can't keep up with their fingers, because the ideas are coming that have nothing to do with the breakdown or the outline or any of that stuff or anything they expected. The fun surprises are happening, and we're trying to leave enough room for that.
Sorry, has knowing what you were supposed to write prompted you to do anything different in your own writing? Plotting wise.
No. Yeah, no, I have a third Hollywood book that I'm planning to write, and I know what it's about. And But I mean, the most definitive thing I could say about that is the subtitle will probably be, "You will know him by the trail of dead." I'm going to kill a lot of people.
Okay, we have a question over here.
It's a cozy then.
It's a cozy.
Yeah.
Well, as the author of the book, have you been tempted to try to get co-writing credits as far as the screenplay went?
Again, it goes back to the zeros on the check. It depends on what I'm asked to do. The writer he pitched himself. There were several writers who had pitched themselves. Some were good, some were not as good. But his was really very human and came from a really solid place of personal experience and loss. And so that's why we chose him. And I mean, am I tempted? There's always a little bit of a temptation to want to make sure it gets done right, as we talked about. But he's asked all the right questions, and it's funny. I just don't feel the need. I really don't feel the need to kind of keep an eye on him or fix anything. I think I'll end up having to do some of that, but that's okay.
Other questions?
Jim, what's your next one?
Actually, I've got two coming out. The follow up to River of Lies is Illusion of Truth. That's coming up in January. In River of Lies, we gave Emily a little, personal life and a little boyfriend that she gets to play with. So in Illusion of Truth, we take that all the way. So
it's a natural progression.
It is.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. And then later this month, Sins of the Father comes out in the Nathan Parker series. Thanks, Chris.
You're a machine, man. Now you're just showing off.
Other questions?
I'm a reporter, so it's yes, and not to ask questions. So, Jim, we've met before because I'm on your Instagram. I don't remember where or when, but what I'm wondering, what prison? You said Folsom. What other?
Yeah, I was I was associate warden at Folsom. That had a job that took me to Pelican Bay, Corcoran, all the women's prisons, which is another world entirely. There's a story for you. And then, so I hit most of the prisons in California. Then I did consulting in prisons across the country. Some of the prisons in Minnesota were a kick, by the way.
Well, if I can ask a question, what was your daily job? What did you show up to do?
It varied depending on what assignment I was in. One of the early jobs in the security housing unit when it was at Folsom. And the security housing unit is a prison within a prison. So if you killed somebody in the general population, you came to my unit. So I had this, collection of very good citizens, in my unit. And I had to walk this tier down to my office every morning. And it was open cell fronts at Folsom. And you'd have to kind of dodge things being thrown at you out the cell bars as you went to work. And we had all the mentally ill on the bottom tier because you'd have to usually fight them out of the cell a lot. So you didn't want to get tossed off the tier. So you did that on the first floor. So next to my office, about 2 cells down, there was this mentally ill guy, and he would throw little balls of poop at you in the morning to greet you,
Just his way of saying hello.
Yeah, he's a very friendly guy. So one morning he wasn't there throwing stuff, and I'm kind of looking, and there were these little figurines, a little rabbit, a little squirrel, and they were sitting on the cell bars, and they're really well made, little ears and everything. And then it dawned on me, he made those out of poop.
Instead of throwing them,
instead of throwing them,
he let his creative side take over.
Yeah, and I was grateful for it. But yeah, that was the kind of daily thing that we had to deal with. There was a lot of downtime, but then there was those high anxiety moments, with riots and shootings and stabbings. But it varied on the job. what I was doing.
I gotta say that's another thing about the publishing world, especially meeting writers, is that the background of everybody in the room is so varied and so damn interesting. This is a small world because it takes so much of your life just to stay in it. Hollywood is hard. It's harder to stay in. But you get into around publishing, you get around authors, what they bring to the party of life is just a banquet.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating. I can just sit and listen to guys like you all day.
It's a fun community to be part of, and I'm glad you're here.
Hey, thanks, man. I'm having a great time.
Yeah. So I think we're running up on our time. If there's any other questions, you know where to find us. But ladies and gentlemen, Jon Lindstrom.
Thank you.